Life often feels like a battlefield, especially when you are on the verge of something great. You may start noticing unusual challenges, unexpected resistance, and difficulties that seem to come out of nowhere. It feels like every step forward is met with opposition, and every door you try to open suddenly becomes harder to push through. But let me tell you something. This is not a coincidence. It is a sign that God is about to do something big in your life, something beyond what you can see right now. And before that breakthrough happens, there is always a period of intense pressure, just like a diamond is formed under extreme conditions. You see, the enemy does not attack what does not threaten him. The reason you are experiencing these setbacks, these battles, and these struggles is that what is ahead of you is powerful. If you were not carrying something great inside you, the enemy would not be trying so hard to discourage you. The moment you get closer to a breakthrough, the enemy will try to shake your faith, plant doubt in your mind, and make you question whether God is really working in your life. But don't fall into that trap. God allows these challenges not to destroy you, but to strengthen you, to refine you, and to prepare you for the weight of the blessing He is about to release into your life. Think about it. When gold is purified, it goes through intense fire to remove impurities. When a warrior is trained, they go through countless battles to become strong. When a tree grows, it must first develop deep roots before it can stand tall and bear fruit. This is exactly what God is doing in your life right now. You might feel like you are in the fire, like you are being tested beyond your limit, like the battle is too heavy to fight. But remember, the intensity of your struggle is a reflection of the magnitude of your blessing. Many people give up too soon because they mistake the pressure for punishment, when in reality it is preparation. They walk away right before the breakthrough because they assume the struggle means they are not meant to have what they have been praying for. But what if I told you that this struggle is actually proof that you are exactly where you need to be? God is stretching you, shaping you, and molding you into the person who can handle the blessing He is about to release. Because let's be real, if you received the blessing too soon, before you were ready, you might not be able to sustain it. Look at the stories in the Bible. Every person who was given something great had to endure trials beforehand. Joseph had dreams of greatness, but before stepping into his destiny, he was betrayed, thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, and imprisoned. But every challenge he faced was part of God's divine plan to elevate him. David was anointed as king, yet before he sat on the throne, he had to fight Goliath, run from Saul, and endure years of hardship. Even Jesus himself had to endure the cross before the resurrection. There is always a test before the testimony, always a struggle before the success. So when you face unusual challenges, don't let them shake your faith. Instead, let them strengthen it. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what is God preparing me for? Shift your perspective from frustration to faith. Instead of seeing the problem, start seeing the promise. Because when you hold on to God, when you refuse to let the trials break you, you will step into a new level of victory that you never imagined possible. One of the most dangerous things the enemy wants you to do is to focus so much on the struggle that you lose sight of the promise. He wants you to think that just because things are hard right now, it means that God is not with you. But let me remind you, God is always working even when you cannot see it. He is always moving even when it feels like nothing is happening. And sometimes the evidence of His presence is not in the absence of trouble, but in the strength He gives you to endure it. If you're in a season where everything feels like it is coming against you, where doors are shutting, where people are walking away, where challenges seem overwhelming, know this: God is still in control. The enemy may try to block your path, but he cannot stop God's plan for your life. What is meant for you will come to you, no matter what opposition you face. God's timing is perfect, and His ways are higher than ours. There will be moments where you feel like giving up, where you wonder if all the effort, all the prayers, all the faith are even worth it. But I need you to hold on a little longer. Push through the doubt. Keep walking in faith, because when God is about to give you something big, the trials intensify, but the victory that follows will be greater than you can ever imagine. When the pressure is at its peak, remember that breakthrough is near. When the storm feels unbearable, remember that peace is coming. When it feels like nothing is working, remember that God is working behind the scenes. You are being refined, strengthened, and prepared for the very thing you prayed for. Don't quit now. Don't let the struggle convince you that the promise is not real. You are too close. Keep going, keep believing, and watch how God moves in your life. Sometimes when you are on the edge of a breakthrough, the things and people around you start to shift. Relationships that once felt stable suddenly become shaky. Opportunities that seemed certain begin to disappear. The places where you once found comfort no longer feel the same. It can be unsettling, even painful, to watch these things change, especially when you don't understand why. But what if I told you that these changes are not happening to harm you, but to prepare you? What if I told you that God is removing distractions, clearing obstacles, and creating space for what He is about to bring into your life? When God is about to give you something big, He has to make room for it. And sometimes that means taking things away. It means closing doors that no longer serve your purpose. It means separating you from people who cannot go where you are going. It means shifting you out of environments that will not support your growth. And in the moment, it might not feel like a blessing. It might feel like rejection. It might feel like loss. It might feel like everything is falling apart. But in reality, it is all falling into place. Think about this. If you want to fill a glass with fresh, clean water, but it is already full of something else, what is the first thing you have to do? You have to empty it. You have to pour out whatever is already inside so that it can be filled with something new. This is exactly what God does in our lives. He removes what no longer serves us so that we can receive something better. But the challenge is that in the moment, we don't always see it that way. We see the loss, we see the separation, we see the discomfort, and we start to question God's plan. Why did that friendship end? Why did that job opportunity fall through? Why did that relationship not work out? We ask these questions, but we don't always get immediate answers, and that is because God's wisdom is beyond our understanding. He sees what we cannot see. He knows what is ahead, and He knows what is best for us. What we think is a setback is often a setup. What we see as a closed door is actually divine protection. What we assume as rejection is actually redirection. Have you ever looked back on something you wanted so badly, something you prayed for, something you fought to keep, only to realize later that losing it was the best thing that ever happened to you? Maybe it was a relationship that ended, and at the time you were heartbroken, but now you see that it was never meant to be. Maybe it was a job you didn't get, and at the time you were frustrated, but now you see that it made room for something better. God does not take things away to punish you. He removes them to prepare you. If something is being removed from your life, trust that it is for a reason. If people are walking away, let them go. If doors are closing, stop trying to force them open. If you feel like you are losing things you once held on to, know that it is because God is making space for something greater. Sometimes we hold on to things because they are familiar, not because they are good for us. We keep people in our lives out of comfort, even when we know they are not meant to be there. We resist change because it is uncomfortable. But what if the very thing you are afraid to lose is the thing that is keeping you from stepping into your next season? God sees the attachments that are weighing you down. He sees the relationships that are draining you. He sees the mindsets that are keeping you stuck. And because He loves you, He will not let you settle for less than what He has for you. So He allows things to shift. He allows people to walk away. He allows situations to change, not to hurt you, but to help you. Not to leave you empty, but to prepare you for what is coming. You may not understand it right now, but trust that everything is working together for your good. Trust that what you lose in this season is nothing compared to what you will gain in the next. Trust that God's plan for your life is greater than anything you could have imagined. When you feel like things are being taken from you, remember that God does not remove without replacing. And what He gives you will always be greater than what you thought you lost. So if you are in a season of transition, if things are shifting, if people are leaving, if doors are closing, do not fear. Do not resist the process. Instead, lean into it. Trust that God is making room. Trust that He is clearing the path. Trust that what is ahead of you is worth every temporary loss, every moment of uncertainty, and every step of faith. What He is preparing you for is bigger than anything you have ever seen before. Keep trusting, keep believing, and watch how everything falls into place. There are moments in life when everything seems still, like you are standing at a crossroads, waiting for something to happen, waiting for a sign, waiting for the answer to a prayer. And in these moments of waiting, doubt starts creeping in. You start questioning whether God has forgotten about you, whether your prayers have gone unheard, whether the dreams in your heart will ever come to pass. You wonder if you misread the signs, if you were mistaken about what you felt God was leading you toward. But what you don't see in the waiting is the work that is happening behind the scenes. You don't see how God is aligning every piece, how He is orchestrating details, how He is preparing you for something that is far greater than what you imagined. Waiting is not wasted time. The silence does not mean God is absent. It does not mean that nothing is happening. In fact, some of the most powerful moves of God happen in the seasons when it feels like nothing is changing. Because in the waiting, God is preparing. He is strengthening you, refining you, removing what is not meant for you, and equipping you for what is ahead. And if you are not careful, you will mistake this season of preparation for a season of denial. You will assume that because you cannot see the progress, it means nothing is happening. But just because you cannot see it does not mean it is not there. Think about a seed planted in the soil. For a long time, it looks like nothing is happening. You water it, you care for it, but there is no visible growth. But underground, where you cannot see, the roots are spreading, the foundation is being built, the strength is being formed. And then one day, when the time is right, the seed breaks through the surface, and suddenly what was once invisible becomes visible. That is how God works. He does His best work in the unseen places, in the hidden moments, in the times when it feels like nothing is changing. But here's the challenge. The waiting season can be difficult. It requires trust. It requires patience. It requires faith in something that you cannot yet see. And sometimes it requires enduring setbacks, disappointments, and delays that test your belief in God's timing. But let me remind you of something. Delay is not denial. Just because something is taking longer than you expected does not mean that God has said no. Sometimes the delay is part of the preparation. Sometimes the wait is necessary to develop the strength you will need for what is coming. Because the truth is, if you received everything you prayed for right now, you might not be ready to handle it. And God loves you too much to give you something before you are ready. When God is about to give you something big, He prepares you for it. And that preparation often looks like stretching, growing, refining, and even discomfort. It looks like lessons that test your patience, challenges that build your endurance, situations that push you to trust Him even when you don't understand. And if you are feeling stretched, if you are feeling tested, if you are wondering why things are taking so long, take heart, because it is a sign that something great is on the way. God is not just interested in blessing you, He is interested in developing you. He wants to make sure that when you step into the blessing, you can handle it. He wants to ensure that when you walk into the next season, you do not crumble under the weight of it, because a blessing given too soon can become a burden. Think about that. If you receive a position before you are ready for the responsibility, it can overwhelm you. If you step into a relationship before you have healed, it can hurt you. If you enter a season of abundance before learning how to manage it, you can lose it. God is not withholding from you, He is preparing you. So instead of focusing on how long it is taking, shift your perspective. Ask yourself, what is God teaching me in this season? What lessons do I need to learn? What parts of my character is He refining? Because the truth is, you are not just waiting for something, you are becoming someone. You are being molded into the person who can carry the blessing that is coming. And when the time is right, when you are ready, when everything is aligned, God will open the doors that no one can shut. He will bring the opportunities that no one can block. He will position you in places that only He could have placed you. And it will not be forced. It will not be something you have to beg for. It will be a natural unfolding, a divine alignment, a blessing that flows effortlessly because it is God ordained. You may be in a season of waiting, but don't waste the wait. Don't spend this time frustrated, discouraged, or questioning whether God is working. He is. And when you least expect it, when you are faithfully doing what He has called you to do, when you are growing in wisdom and strength, the breakthrough will come, the doors will open, the answer will be clear, and you will see that every moment of waiting was not a delay, but a divine setup. Keep trusting, keep believing, keep preparing, because what is coming is bigger than what you prayed for. There comes a moment when all the waiting, all the preparation, all the lessons, and all the trials begin to make sense. At first it didn't. At first it felt unfair. It felt like you were being stretched beyond your limits, tested in ways you never expected, and pushed into situations that made you question everything. You wondered why the road was so difficult, why you had to endure so much, and why it seemed like everyone else was moving forward while you were stuck in place. But now, looking back, you begin to see the pattern. You begin to understand why certain doors had to close, why certain people had to leave, and why certain opportunities never worked out. Because God was not denying you, He was preparing you, He was making a way, even when you didn't realize it. You see, when God is about to give you something big, the enemy takes notice. The opposition increases. The challenges seem to multiply. And for a moment, you might think that the hardships are a sign that things are falling apart. But in reality, they are a sign that things are coming together. Because before every breakthrough, there is always a battle. Before every new season, there is always a transition. Before every great blessing, there is always a test of faith. And if you are feeling like everything is coming against you, it's because something great is ahead of you. The enemy does not attack what is not valuable. He does not waste his time on those who are not a threat. If you are experiencing resistance, it's because you are stepping into something significant. If you are facing obstacles, it's because you are on the verge of something greater. And if you are feeling like everything is trying to hold you back, it's because you are closer than you think. But here's the thing, God does not allow these trials to break you. He allows them to build you. He allows them to strengthen you, to refine your faith, to develop your character. He allows them to teach you endurance, patience, and trust, because when the blessing comes, you will need the strength that this season is building in you. You will need the wisdom that these lessons are teaching you. You will need the faith that this journey is strengthening in you. Think about David before he became king. He was anointed long before he was appointed. He had the calling, but he didn't yet have the position. And in between the anointing and the appointing, he had to go through a season of trials, battles, and waiting. He had to face Goliath. He had to run from Saul. He had to endure hardships. But through it all, God was preparing him for the throne. Through it all, God was building the warrior, the leader, and the king within him. If David had received the throne too soon, he wouldn't have been ready for the responsibility. But because he endured the process, he stepped into his purpose fully prepared. And the same applies to you. God is preparing you for something greater, but he will not place you in it before you are ready. He will not elevate you before you have the foundation to sustain it, because he is not just interested in giving you the blessing, he is interested in making sure you can keep it. He is not just interested in answering your prayers, he is interested in making sure that when the answer comes, you are able to walk in it with confidence, wisdom, and strength. That's why some things had to fall apart. That's why some relationships had to end. That's why some opportunities didn't work out. Because God saw what you couldn't see. He saw the dangers ahead. He saw the distractions that would have pulled you away. He saw the burdens that would have weighed you down. And in his mercy, he removed them before they could hinder your destiny. It may not have made sense at the time, but now you can see it more clearly. Now you can understand why certain prayers were not answered the way you expected. Now you can appreciate the doors that didn't open because they would have led you in the wrong direction. Now you can be grateful for the delays because they were not denials, they were divine redirections. So if you are in a season where it feels like everything is shifting, where it feels like things are uncertain, trust that it is all part of the process. Trust that God is moving on your behalf. Trust that he is aligning everything in his perfect timing. Because when God is about to give you something big, he will not just open a door, he will open the right door. He will not just bring any opportunity, he will bring the opportunity that aligns with your destiny. He will not just send anyone, he will send the right people who are meant to walk this journey with you. But you have to be ready. You have to let go of what is not meant for you. You have to surrender the plans you thought were best and trust that God's plan is greater. You have to step out of fear and step into faith. Because when the moment comes, when the door opens, when the blessing arrives, you don't want to hesitate. You don't want to second guess. You want to walk boldly into what God has prepared for you, knowing that you are ready, knowing that you are equipped, knowing that everything you have been through was leading you to this very moment. And when it happens, you will see that every trial had a purpose, every delay had a reason, every setback was a setup for something greater. And in that moment, you will understand that God was never withholding from you. He was preparing you for something beyond what you could have imagined. So trust the process, stay faithful, keep believing, because what is coming is far greater than what you left behind.